Welcome to another episode of our Fireside Chat series here at the Malaysia Leadership Summit. We now welcome Andreas Voyazaki. I pronounced that correctly. Freda Liu here. So Andreas is currently the founder and leadership coach of AMV Plus Academy. He previously was the group CEO of Star Media Group and also with Havas Media. He has significant experience in the media space, and this is going to be a thrilling conversation on the changing media space, leadership and how we can prepare ourselves for the future. Of course, he also wrote a book last year. So Andreas, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Very good to see you again. Can you quickly introduce yourself to us? Maybe not so quick, but you can introduce yourself.
Is this the 1 minute introduction or?
It says 1 minute, but I'll allow you two.
Two, okay, that's very generous of you. Well, great to be here. Good to see you, Frida, as always. It's a privilege, and I enjoy that. It's an amazing event out there, and I don't know what scenes you have seen out of that, but walking in, the energy is intense and very high and very positive, so I'm glad to be here. Yes, I have a very hard name to pronounce. That makes me Greek. Born in a small kampong, and an unplanned life journey brought me all the way to Malaysia to make it home. I've been a CEO and leader of companies across Asia since '97, structuring companies, making companies. I worked for Omnicom, for WPP, for Havas. Last stint was with the Star Media Group until I came to my senses and I started my own academy doing training and coaching. So by heart, I guess, it's all about my single-minded purpose just to become and be a catalyst for positive change. And I take a lot of joy in that when it happens.
And we know that Andreas will never leave Malaysia because of durians.
And Laksa, that's right.
And Laksa, right? Just want to talk about your time as a CEO at Havas and the Star Media Group, right? What were some of the lessons learned in those experiences as a CEO?
Where can we start? Every position, like my 10 years at Omnicom here in Malaysia, were different challenges, and that makes it so because the situation is different and the teams are different. And so now when I teach and coach situational leadership, it's all
Industries are different.
Exactly. It's all about not only the environment and what surrounds you, but also the readiness of your team, right? And so it was different companies at different stages. And I think the lessons that I've learned, if I could distill them, would be about, first of all, adapting to the environment, number one, understanding the feeling of the teams and how willing are they to do what they really need to do, understanding the challenges, and definitely by far, perhaps the most important one, which I consider the number one trait in good leadership, is to be self-aware and understand yourself and how you can really become that glue that brings all the elements together. You need to be resilient, you need to be adaptive, you need to really be able to manage different stakeholders in order to bring your cause forward. That's never easy, because what the shareholders want versus the rest of the stakeholders want can be extremely different. And so how do you keep that balance between profit and purpose? How do you keep that balance between the money and the emotional aspect of things, which in fact is the most important thing? And like my first Japanese sensei in the business, Kei Ueno, said to me once, the secret lies on the 3 Ps, and that is people, product, profit. But the real secret is the sequence. People, product, profit, not the other way around. And that is a very difficult balance to achieve, because putting people first is what we should really do. Nevertheless, sometimes the pressures of the market and the situation stipulate that we put profit first, and we know that equation is not going to work. So as a leader, that was perhaps the biggest lesson on how to really balance that through my self-awareness and achieve the goals.
Right. So the sequence, people, product, then profit, right? I want to go into this particular industries because that's, I guess, something more entrenched in your life and media, right? Which is changing significantly. I know with numerous new media players emerging, usurping a lot of the traditional media players. What exactly is this transition that is taking place? And walk us through that.
Well, what can I say? I grew up in a small village, and the first time I watched TV, I was 9.5. Before then, I had no idea what that thing is. Needless to say, about laptops and mobile phones and tablets, right? And so when I started as a media planner in New York, we didn't have internet, we didn't have computers, we had typewriters. And when I left the industry, all of that has dramatically changed, right? And don't go that far. Even 10 years ago, programmatic was a word that didn't exist in the lingo of media planners. And within 5 or 6 years, it became mainstream. So I think what has really changed, to me, on the surface, is a technological change. Right. And I think sometimes we have been mistaken in it for being the true change, because to me, that's not really the true change. Technology becomes a conduit, and it becomes a reason for us to adapt. It can be liberating, it could be challenging, but the real change is the change within. And I teach and coach a lot of managing change, from the very top to the middle to the bottom, right? And fundamentally, the real change is in the attitude that we have. And so how can we adapt emotionally and behaviorally in that change is the most critical part. We know by now that technology is only going to exponentially progress day by day, right? And so how can we adapt to that change? I used to say change is a bend on the road, and if you don't take it, you're going to fall off the cliff. But I changed that image with a spiral. Right. And it happens all the time, and it will happen all the time continuously. So how are we mentally, behaviorally, attitudinally prepared to really cope with that change? And that goes back to what I call power skills. Right. They call them soft skills. I disagree, because it's all about that emotional intelligence, that vulnerability, that adaptation and resilience that is going to help us adapt to that change. So to me, it's more of what is really happening within rather than the without. Right. But the without triggers the within, and we need to work on that.
So I was going to ask you about the VUCA world, but it sort of connects to what you're saying, right?
It really does. And a great friend of mine, Yassir, we teach together sometimes, and I have a privilege to do that. He added an extra U, and he calls it VUCA. Okay. And the extra U is about untrust. And I love that, because all this changing environment and all this craziness of the world that, especially now in the last 2.5, 3 years, and COVID accelerated that does, is to create a lot of that. So how do we truly, through that change in a VUCA world, create trustful environments that people are allowed to fail in that process of adapting? Right. Because we want it fast, we want it now, we want it good, and we know that we cannot have all three at the same time, right? Yet that's the oxymoron challenge that we have to face. So what do we do? I replace VUCA with vision and victory, with unity, with cohesion, and with agility. And I think that instead of seeing it as volatile and uncertain, we can translate that positively into our heads and into our heart, into unity and into vision and into agility and into staying together to really cope with it. The choice is ours. I always say, if it's to be, it's up to me, right? So either we see VUCA as a danger, as strife and uncertainty and all that negative stuff, and we have to manage it. Or we look the positive into that, and we just grab the bull by the horns and do what we have to do, and we instill that to our teams if we want to be better leaders.
What was it that the Chinese saying, right? The crisis is danger and opportunity.
Exactly.
Right?
That's right.
Now you've set up a leadership academy and you're a leadership coach, right? How did that transition take place? And I'm sure there is a wonderful story. I would have thought you would have started it 10 years ago, personally.
You are right. And it was unplanned. If when I started my Group CEO job at the Star, anybody would tell me a year from now, you're going to quit this and you're going to do your own leadership academy, AMV Plus Academy, and be a trainer and a coach professionally, I would say, really? I was a corporate all my life. I was a CEO riding high from success to success and all that, but I guess the universe had a different plan. And so when the stars aligned, stars pun not intended, for me to go, it was not the obvious choice, Freda. And I struggled for a while, and I had to look within, and it was not easy, and I had to really define what my purpose is. That's where being a catalyst for positive change came through. I said, how am I going to do that? And when I look into what do I like to do, I realized that I do like to bring about transformation, first and foremost inside me. And in fact, this morning I had a conversation. I said, the good coach is the coach that can be a coach to himself or herself. And they said, what do you mean by that? We coach people. And I said, no, in order to coach people, you need to coach yourself first, just like that. And so when I looked into it, and what really gives me joy and happiness, it was to see that transformation in me, first of all. I've been angry many times. I've been disappointed many times. I've been sad many times. And I thought, that's not really the purpose of life, isn't it? Right. It is all about happiness, and we all want that. So how can you bring that about? So I thought, okay, I've been a coach for 13, 14 years, certified and practicing it, not professionally. And I thought, this is it. The penny dropped, the aha moment. That's what I really need to do. So I thought it is about providing that transformational training and immersive coaching that really moves people. Right. And I had to start it with myself. And so AMV Plus Advisory and AMV Plus Academy came about. And I was scared in the beginning. I still am sometimes. However, I keep on going, because what do they say? And you said it many times yourself, you become what you believe. And I believe that that's my purpose. Therefore, I have to do what I need to do to be a catalyst for positive change.
So change and transformation. And the reason why I said this was because, you know, in your previous life, I know you were working with students, and you were doing a lot of this work on top of the work at Havas, and you were helping them develop books and develop things. So it's like, you know, you've always had that heart in transforming, and especially I think with the young ones where we can still mold them. But yeah. Okay, so change and transformation. What are your thoughts on change management, transformation, and what do effective leaders need to do to manage and drive this change?
First of all, let me just add one more sentence to the students and me doing a lot of work with the universities. I had very selfish reasons to do that, and that is because I know our kids never listen to us, they listen to others. And so I thought, if I do it to them, then somebody's going to do it to my son, because he doesn't listen to me, so he will listen to them. So that was my selfish reason. And nothing gives me more joy than really working with the young minds. Is just incredible, and it's my time to pay it back very seriously, and I love that. What do leaders have to do with instilling change and transformation and all that good stuff? I think first and foremost, and I really mean that, they need to change themselves. And they need to change the beliefs in themselves. And unless they truly believe that, and they believe what that can do and what they can bring about, it won't happen. It will be superficial and fake. And they have to create the space and the environment that will be conducive to that. It has to be an environment of trust. I'll give you an example, which I had this conversation this morning actually during some training that I had, and that's why I came at 1:30 today. It's a real example. So there was one leader who really wanted his team to create a trusted environment, and that was the mandate. And yet, when in my executive coaching with him, he said, you know, the way I operate, and I told them, is that I expect you to do it, and once you do it, then I'll trust you. And I said, well, isn't that exactly the opposite of what you want to accomplish? Because how are we going to create an environment of trust where people can feel okay and empowered to fail and try new things if you tell them, well, I can only trust you if you will achieve this? And so once we flipped that, and once the behavior became different, things start to happen. So I think that for leaders to really bring about change and transformation, they need to understand what that means to all levels. First of all, what does that mean to them, and how do they take it, and how do they cope with it? And how vulnerable are they, and how willing are they to leave the ego out of the door and be part of the team, truly. I also believe that nobody has bad intentions. All of us, we start with good intentions in mind, but some things happen along the way. The filters block that and change it, right? And the perceptions become different. So I think they need to really become, and this is my number one principle for leadership, to become self-aware, to bring that self-awareness in their leadership style and look into them. And that's why I said earlier that to me, to be a good coach, you have to be able to coach yourself. And once they do that, they will bring about change and transformation. And most importantly, they will successfully, because the team is going to be with them.
Which leads me to courage, right? And that's your book, Courage at the Crossroads. How does one develop courage in leadership?
Right.
To do the right thing.
That's right. There could be many ways, but, and you know we didn't plan this, so that's a great question, Freda. If I really strip that onion to really see what's in the heart of it, I believe it is vulnerability and self-awareness. And when I look back, really trying to connect the dots that I collected along the years, being a powerful CEO for powerful companies, structuring, restructuring, creating them from scratch, like Havas and many others, no one, or I should say perhaps one or two only, gave me the license to be vulnerable. I'm a CEO. I'm powerful. I know everything. I should be strong. I should not have faults. I should do the right thing constantly, this, that, and the other. And you know what kind of a burden that is? It's just excruciating. And so, if we really become vulnerable, and if we accept that, and if we forgive ourselves looking back, and if we leave that ego out of the door, then, and if we really want something super bad, then we will gather the courage to really do the right things. Vulnerability is the key there. If we cannot allow ourselves to become vulnerable and say, I don't know everything, I screwed up, I'm not good at this, and to say, I'm sorry, and ask for help, then how can we do it? And that is going to bring courage into the rest of our actions. And that's why I call the book Courage at the Crossroads, which, by the way, had a different title, different picture, was a different book altogether, and my intention was to talk about leadership. And then I realized after a couple of chapters that the world does not need another book on leadership with chapters that tick the boxes. So I thought, best that I tell my story, and I'll talk about leadership in ways that textbooks don't teach, and it's through real events that happened to me, and make it personal and a little bit more real. And while I was living my life, I had no idea. It's only now that it starts making sense why I'm here to do what I do, but that required a lot of courage, and it still does, to really heal all the bad stuff and turn all the negatives to positives. It requires courage at the crossroads,
Right.
yeah.
So there's vulnerability, right? Vulnerability takes courage, and vulnerability gives you courage.
That's right.
And I guess the final question here is, all this, and this is something that we talk a lot about, is about mental health, the issue of mental health, right? And being resilient and having courage and doing that, and it takes a toll, right? What are your thoughts to ensure that we take good care of our health mentally?
Yeah, well, I'm Greek, so I'll refer to the ancient Greeks. They said,
It's a Greek tragedy.
Yeah, it's a Greek tragedy. This one is not tragedy. This is good stuff. And they say nousiis and somatii. And it really means that the ancient Greeks said that. The modern ones, so. They eat a lot. But back then it was, you need to have a healthy mind in a healthy body, and they go together, which is another NLP principle that I do believe in, right? And so I think that we need to really nourish our thoughts, look around us to what is happening, and accept it. I saw, first and foremost, myself breaking. It wasn't easy. Like I said, I didn't leave the star to do this. I left the star because I had to leave the star. The universe had a plan. At that time, I was fighting, just fighting the situation that, in fact, took me to the path that I am now, and I realized that that was meant to be. And during that, I broke many times. And the mental health bit has a lot of facets, right? You lose belief in yourself, in your abilities. You used to be good, but you're not. Friends who would respect you supposedly because you sit on the chair and they want the chair, they all of a sudden, suddenly, miraculously disappear when you're not sitting on that chair. And that leaves a huge gap in you. You start doubting yourself, doubting your friendships. You become angry. You break. And then at the same time, in my case at least, here I am, a very powerful individual, controlling things, being a powerful CEO and all that stuff. And now I control what? Nothing. You can't even control what's going to happen tomorrow. You know how scary that is. I know you know, because you've been there, and look at you. And you've been, by the way, an inspiration to me, and you know that I mean that. And you break. And during that journey, during COVID, I saw so many people in the same situation, in different levels and in different ways. And I looked back in people who took their lives, like Robbins and Bourdain, right? And you think, you see the facade, you see the swan swimming with grace in the lake, and you don't see the legs that go like crazy underneath, and what goes in the head, right? And all of a sudden, you see all that, and it affected a lot of people. Many don't want to say it because they're embarrassed. Vulnerability, remember? And I thought that we have overlooked one of the most important things. And I'm glad and I'm grateful to COVID that it really brought this to the surface, because it became less of a taboo. And we know athletes, not to mention any, Naomi that is, who come forth and they criticize them and they say this and the other, yet they came forth, and that took a lot of courage and a lot of vulnerability to do that. And I like it because it brought all that issue to the surface. And I think from now on, people, generally speaking, will start paying more attention to that, on mental health, that is. And I believe that is a great thing. And so some are lucky, and they've been surrounded with friends and support systems that really elevated them. One of them is me. And here I am looking back, feeling grateful. But there are also some unlucky ones who are either gone or still struggling in different levels. And so I would look at you guys and I would say that if you know anyone that is struggling, anyone that you think has a challenge, reach out to them and help them talk to them, embrace them, do something that will really help them. In fact, I wanted to link the book that I published last year to mental health and help the causes. And even though that was a plan that didn't materialize for reasons that the universe knows, I took that opportunity, and I was every moment that I could get that opportunity would talk about mental health and how important it is to really reach out. And when you are there, you don't have the courage, or you cannot think on what to think in order to reach for help. So it's up to us when we see a situation like that on what to do, and give a hand to help people, because we're all in this together, and that's what COVID told us. Have you seen the pictures from James Webb? Let me tell you that, yeah, ever since July 12, and I have to say this, I don't know, something happened in me, because I always wondered about what is the universe expanding into, and who are we, what are we doing, what's our purpose here on a bigger level, right? And I always was fascinated by Hubble and the pictures and the universe and the stars and planets and comets and galaxies. And I always ask the question, which I know I will not get an answer in my lifetime at least. But when I saw these pictures and the videos, it was just mind-boggling. And here we are, being petty sometimes, being angry, unhappy, and we waste moments and times where we could be more positive, more happy, or happier, I should say, and make a difference to the world, and move things for the better in a positive way. So I love these pictures, because we're nothing really, dust in the wind, and instead of wasting our energy to fight, squabble, and all of that, I say that to myself because I'm not a saint. I fight and squabble and get angry every single day, but at least I try to stay self-aware and give a slap to my face and say, hey, if you want to be coach and a good trainer and a good leader, you look at yourself first. You do it first.
Look at yourself first. Thank you for your sharing. Thank you for your courage. Andres Voyazaki from AMV Plus. And that's it for this episode.